Most of us tend to focus on that one big, audacious goal that we all have. And the problem with that is that it may be so far out there or so unrealistic that subconsciously we believe we can't ever achieve it. My guest and friend, Tommy Baker, makes the case for focusing more on the process than the result. In fact, in his new book, he teaches how to fall in love with the process and achieve our wildest dreams. Today, we talk about overcoming the law of diminishing returns, how to effectively set goals, the greatest myths of achievement, and how to harness the power of the 1% rule.
You're a man of action. You live life to the fullest, embrace your fears, and boldly chart your own path. When life knocks you down, you get back up one more time, every time. You are not easily deterred or defeated. Rugged, resilient, strong. This is your life. This is who you are. This is who you will become. At the end of the day, and after all is said and done, you can call yourself a man.
Gentlemen, what is going on today? My name is Ryan Mickler, and I am the host and the founder of this podcast, The Order of Man. I want to welcome you back, or I want to welcome you for the first time. If you are here for the first time, guys, this is a show about becoming a better man, a better husband, a better father, a better business owner, a better community leader, and of course, just a better man in general. So to that end, we are interviewing the world's most successful men, guys like Dakota Meyer, Jocko Willink, Leif Babin, Andy Frisella, Grant Cardone, Ryan Holiday, Joe DeSena. I mean, you name it. We've had such an incredible lineup of guests, and I've put together about 8 to 10 new shows that are going to be coming out here in the next couple of months. And I've got to tell you, our lineup just keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So guys, if you haven't already done this, make sure you hit that little subscribe button. You're going to want to hit that button because you will be notified every single week, every single Tuesday when a new show comes out, a new interview show comes out, and you will be notified of that. So make sure you hit subscribe, leave us a rating and review while you're there. Also, we've got our show that comes out tomorrow, every Wednesday, called In the Trenches. My good friend and fellow Iron Council member, Bubba Downs, hosts that show, and he talks with regular, ordinary, everyday guys like you and me who are in the trenches, doing the work, getting it done, struggling where we're struggling, achieving where we're achieving, and really just on this journey to make the best out of our life. And then, of course, on Friday, we've got our Friday Field Notes, which is me. You're going to hear from me for about 10, 15, 20 minutes or so, talk about whatever. It might be on the subject of masculinity or responsibility or name it. I mean, if it's bouncing around in my brain, I'm having a conversation with you on Friday about that. And I would love to get some feedback from you guys. If you like these shows, let me know. If you don't, let me know. But give me some feedback so we can continue to improve the experience that you're having here with the Order of Man podcast. Now, outside of the podcast, guys, we've got the website, orderofman.com. And then we've got the Facebook group as well. You might want to check out facebook.com/groups/Order of Man. And then I've been getting quite a few emails from guys who are asking how they can get more or what's next or what is this Order of Man thing all about. And I think the best place to turn for that is our membership group. It's the Brotherhood. It's called The Iron Council. This is a collection of roughly 360 plus men right now having some serious conversations. And at the end of the day, my goal with that brotherhood is to really bridge the gap between what we as men know we should be doing. And look, let's face it, 99% of us know what we need to do, but we were trying to overcome that hurdle of how do we do it? What do we do? How do we implement this? And how do we actually put this into action? And that's what this brotherhood is all about. It's about taking the knowledge that you hear on this podcast and the other groups and the things that we're doing, and then applying that information to actually make it work and improve your life. So we've got challenges, we've got assignments, we've got battle teams, we've got calls, we've got guest experts coming on, which is something we just barely added. In fact, just last week was our first guest expert. His name is Rourke Denver, a former Navy SEAL and just an incredible, incredible man. He came and talked with us exclusively. So guys, if you're interested in joining our brotherhood and banding with me and the other guys, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. Again, that's orderofman.com/Iron Council. Now, one thing you have not heard from me in a while is a show sponsor. And the reason for that is because I regrouped, I kind of rethought the strategy of having a sponsor on the show. And I didn't want to hawk products to you. I didn't want to share stuff with you that wasn't going to be relevant for you. So I have been contacted by and been in touch with some companies, but I specifically reached out to my friend, you may know him, and his name is Pete Roberts with Origin. And I've managed to build a friendship with him. And he talked about wanting to mention what he's doing. I use their products, I use their stuff, and I wholeheartedly believe in their mission. I mean, basically, these are guys, these are men in the woods of Maine. And what they're doing is, frankly, they're taking America back. And the beauty of what they're doing is that they have 100% made in America products without compromise. Everything that they make, everything that they do is all made in America. And it's pretty incredible and pretty inspiring to watch some of their stories. So they pull raw ingredients from the earth. They make training gear for jiu-jitsu, which I know a lot of our audience is involved with, compression gear, lifestyle apparel. And then the thing that I really am liking lately is they also have a nutritional division. And I know a lot of you guys probably listen to the Jocko podcast. Pete and Jocko are friends and partners, and together they've come up with a couple of different products. One is Jocko Joint Warfare. The other is Super Krill, which I actually use the Super Krill, and Discipline, I use that as well. These are amazing nutritional products that I'm using in my everyday life, and I want you to check it out as well. So if you are interested in learning a little bit more about what they're doing, their story, and all the wonderful things my friend Pete Roberts over at Origin is doing, head to Origin Maine, OriginMaine, Maine.com/Order of Man. You can check it out, see what they're up to, and see if it's a good fit for you. So again, OriginMaine.com/Order of Man. Guys, with that said and that information out of the way, let me introduce you to my guest. His name is Tommy Baker, another great man, another great friend of mine. He has been on the show before, so you may recognize his name. He wrote a book a while back, but has since written a new book. And I knew based on your feedback and the messages and texts that I got after our original show that I needed to have him on again to have a conversation about his new book. If you haven't listened to the first episode, you are going to hear why Tommy and I get along so well. His energy is second to none. His enthusiasm, his engagement with life is infectious. He's the founder of the Resist Average Academy and podcast. He's got a passion, guys, for helping people achieve more in every single area of their lives. Originally, he's a fitness coach, and he's still doing that, but he's since expanded his own capacity for growth and expansion, and he's more focused now on helping people get their mindset right. And that mindset piece is critical. It is so critical. His first book, again, is called Unresolution, and then the follow-up is what you'll hear about today. It's called The 1% Rule. Tommy, what's up, brother? Thanks for joining me back on the show again today.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here for a second time, my man. Thank you.
Well, we've had countless conversations podcasting-wise. This is probably our fourth podcast together, I think.
Which is beautiful. And, our conversations are sometimes could also be podcasts. That's like when you connect with people that are like-minded and that support and challenge you and see the world in powerful ways, like that's what happens, right?
That's exactly right. I was looking at Instagram or Facebook or something earlier today. How'd the book launch go, man?
It was awesome, man. It was beautiful. And we capped it last night with an awesome book launch party here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And it's just beautiful to look around and, as you know, to see all the support. No one goes through this alone. And so even from the person who just liked a couple things on social media to the person who bought the book and some of my closest people, as much as it was about the book, it was more about my support team.
Yeah, it looked like a really cool event, and I wish I could have been there for that, but obviously live a little far away to be able to make it down there on any given night. So
there'll be more coming.
Good, man. Good. We'll make sure we get to some of those. Talk to me about the premise of the book. I mean, the 1% rule, I've got an idea since I've gone through the book, but I would love to get a framework for the rest of the discussion today.
Absolutely. It was really birthed from spending so much time in the trenches coaching others and also just having conversations with people in everyday life and them setting these massive expectations for wanting to create change. So they had really great intentions, but their expectations were extremely high. And what would happen, Ryan, is I'm sure like you've seen, they would get started, and the moment that they experienced some adversity, the moment that they stopped feeling enthusiastic, the moment that they got off track for a second, they would just give up and give in because they had this illusion that change is easy. And so I really wanted to give people a system to say, no, that's not what it's about. How about we just place your self-esteem around the process? And that process is specifically, we're going to get 1% better every day. And if we can do that at the very minimum throughout over a year with incremental growth, we get 3.65x return. And you and I know exponential growth, you can get up to 37x, 3,700. So anywhere in between that is something I would take any day of the week. You as a financial planner, you know that. And I wanted to give people that system to just wake up every day and fall in love with the process, because you and I know that's what actually gives us meaning and fulfillment in life.
And how does this contrast with those that you hear that talk about setting big, crazy, unrealistic goals? I mean, is that something that's still worth doing, or is this in contrast to that philosophy?
No, it's in alignment. So I still believe, and I talk about it in the book, we still have to have that vision that pulls us, the vision that, you can call it moonshot thinking, you can call it 10X, whatever it may be. I love it. I love people who think big, ambition, all that. But what the book does is you have to bring it down to today. And I mean today as in today, Friday, when we're recording this podcast. It's like based on that vision, what are you doing today? And this is where people get lost, right? They set the big vision and then they get lost in the how. And I have a whole chapter on, it's called The How is Where Dreams Go to Die, because that's where we get lost in paralysis by analysis. That's where we get lost in self-doubt. And so we got to bring it back all the way to today. And today is very, very simple. But as you know, the simple stuff many times also doesn't get done. And so it's very much in alignment with it. We have to have a vision that we're going through is big, but we have to bring it down to the most tangible level today.
How do you avoid getting lost in the how? Because I hear you say that, and I have certainly experienced that in my own life. I've seen countless people experience that. But at the same time, it is important to figure out how you're going to do things. So how do you strike that balance?
People get so ahead of themselves, right? They say they want to build this business and they have this dream about the business. And we realize that today they have none of those things. And so to think way too far into the future that you're not even close enough, you haven't even experienced, is where people get lost in paralysis by analysis. And so, of course, there's a part of the how that is crucial, but the part of the how that I focus on is the first 30 days based on the goal and the vision that was set. And that allows for these few pillars of execution that are high levels of urgency for us to move forward every single day. So there is a time and a place to think about the how, but in the book, I really argue if we spend most of our time on the what, we spend most of our time on the why, a deeply rooted emotional why, and then we bring it down to the first 30 days, the how will start to reveal itself. And I told the story last night at the book launch. I'm standing on stage. I'm looking at all these people. I moved out to Arizona a couple of years ago. But before that, I had a vision that I was going to be speaking to people and I was going to be launching something. Now, I didn't know where I was going to be. I was living in New York at the time. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I didn't know the specific people that were going to be there. I didn't know specifically what I was launching, but I had a vision. And then the next day after I set that vision, I started to move forward and I started to make decisions in line with that vision. They were small, but as time went on, the how started to open up and reveal itself. And to me, that's why I say the how is where dreams go to die, because people get lost in the logic and the paralysis by analysis. And I could do this, I should do that. And it's like, no, let's just focus on what you're going to do today and for the next 30 days.
So I want to come back to this vision, but before we do, I really like where you talked about just identifying what you need to do over the next 30 days, because this is a conversation we have a lot. It's like, sometimes you've just got to take that first step with a little bit of faith, and that's something you actually cover and talk about in the book as well. But just having a little bit of faith to take the first step, not really knowing where that's going to lead and not really knowing what the second step is, but knowing that once you take that first step, in a way, that second step will begin to manifest itself.
Absolutely. And you said a little bit of faith, and I say a lot of faith. That first step requires a lot of faith. It's that first step into something that's new and that's unknown. And you and I talked about this when you were on my show, and that's inherently uncomfortable, right? Something that is different from where we are today it can be seen as a threat. And so, I tell people in the book, if you experience fear, if you experience doubt, if you experience, high levels of just not knowing how you're going to do it, then that's a sign that you're thinking big and bold. And that's a sign to actually move in and step into that first step and that second step and that third step. And you and I know once we get, 100 steps in us, we start to create some momentum and we start to actually believe that it's not only possible, but it's going to come true.
So I want to talk about the vision, the purpose, your mission, why. I mean, these are all terms that we hear, and quite honestly, in the entrepreneurial world and the online space, they get thrown around so much, they become a little convoluted and it's hard to know what exactly that even means or if it's important. And I think if most people address it, they probably just address it at a surface level. For example, my why is my wife and kids. It's like, well, good. I think that's noble and honorable, and I think that's important. But is that really deep enough to drive you to take new action and a new course in your life? So walk me through, if you would, how somebody begins to even articulate what these terms even mean.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. Many times they become this grand thing, right? Like I tell a story all the time about being at a seminar and the guy leading it, he's, okay, you're going to write down your life purpose in 2 sentences, go. And he gave us 2 hours. And I noticed everybody starts looking around, right? And it's like this overwhelming pressure to define your life's purpose in a couple hours, right? And that's nearly impossible. So one of the big things with purpose, with vision, with all of these deep things that are, just like you said, status quo in personal development, entrepreneurship, success, mindset, et cetera, I want to take out the pie in the sky feeling around it and bring it down to today. Because if you and I have to define our life purpose right now for the rest of our lives today, it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I mean, very rare is somebody going to be able to do that in a matter of a 35 to 45 minute podcast.
Absolutely, right? So I like to bring that down and make it just really, really practical. And some of the exercises that I do in terms of identifying purpose and vision, all of that. So it's like, great. So let's make a list of the things that light you up in life. Let's make a list of the real world skills that you have right now. And let's combine those and see what are some potential vehicles. And I like the word vehicle because it means it's an evolution that those two can fit into. And that's a place where we start to live into our purpose. But you and I know living in our purpose, living in our vision, this is an evolution. And so the process of it, we're always going to grow into it. We're always going to expand into it. So I think it actually lets people off the hook, Ryan. When we have to define our purpose and it's this big monumental thing, I think it lets people off the hook from actually doing the work and moving forward today. So I just bring it down to ground level and say, hey, what lights you up? What skills do you have based on where you want to go? What skills do you need to acquire? And let's create a game plan from that. And then even that, because most people are living so disconnected from their purpose, even that's going to give you a bunch of energy and a new spark of enthusiasm that you didn't have before.
No, it's a good point, because even when I started Order of Man, like I didn't have some grand vision laid out of what I wanted it to become. And we've been going now for 3 years this month. And it's different than what I thought it would be when I started, because I didn't really have any idea, quite honestly. And it's morphed and it's evolved and it's grown in a different path than I thought it would. But I would have never got to this point, which I feel is like my life's work, my life's calling at this point, if I wasn't willing just to take one step and just see like, where would this take me? And then you take the next step and the next step and the next step. And before you know it, you look back and think, man, how did I even get here? I'm excited I'm here, but how in the world did I even get here?
And let me ask you, Ryan, you said it's different now. Is it more powerful or less powerful than you imagined?
Way more powerful for me, way more uplifting and fulfilling, and way more impactful and influential in a lot more people's lives than I thought it would be.
Okay, awesome. And I wanted to harp on that for anybody listening, because this is the powerful part about the whole thing. If we get so lost in the specifics of the vision that we become rigid and we set, this is our awareness, this is how we want it to look and feel like, et cetera, we might miss the alternative that is actually even more powerful, the same thing that you just described. You had no idea, right? You just took the first step, you had faith and trust, but the end result, or your current evolution of the end result, was more powerful than you could have actually imagined. And that's what I want people to know, right? Because the greatest tragedy is not knowing what could have been, right? You had no idea.
Sure.
It's have faith and trust and move forward. And you had no idea that what you just created would be a part of your reality today. And that's what I want to teach people too.
I want to talk about the myths that you go through, and there's 5 of them that you outline and you identify. We kind of talked about the expectation. People set this false reality of what this is going to look like, and then we fail to meet that expectation. For example, somebody goes into the gym for the first time in 5 or 10 years, and they think that they're going to be able to lose, 20 pounds in a week. And then they don't, and they're distraught, and they think they're a failure because they had an unrealistic expectation. Am I understanding this correctly?
100%. And we see this in entrepreneurship all the time, right? The people, they quit their job, they start their business, and they assume that they're going to get to 10, 15, 20,000 a month. I mean, I've had so many people tell me after reading Expert Secrets, and they'll look at me in the eye and they say, man, I'm about to build a $20,000 a month funnel. Now, granted, they have no experience at all.
Right. Or anybody to even promote this to. I mean, it's completely unrealistic.
Exactly. And so, and then honestly, this has happened like 10 times now. And when I check back, this is just a massive issue. It's like, no, let's not try to get to 20K. How about we just get to 1K? Let's get to the 2K, right? Because if we have these, just like you said, we have these massive expectations, anything less than that is pure failure. Anything less than that means that we're not good enough. We didn't have the right skills. The programmer or the mentor that we went to scammed us because they promised these big things. And it's like, dude, let's get a reality check. You've been on the couch for 14 years. You just started getting back in the gym. Let's celebrate the small wins. Let's have you drink water for a month. Let's have you hit 3 workouts a week for 3 months and fall in love with that process, not the expectation.
Well, what I really like about what you're talking about here too, and in the tagline or the subtitle of the book, is basically falling in love with the process. And I like that because you can control the process, but you can't always control the outcome. Sure, 9 times out of 10, it's going to work out if you do the process. But I think if we measure our level of success based on the actions that we're taking and then essentially just letting the chips fall where they may, I think that's a much better way to live.
And it builds self-trust and self-reliance. You know this. I mean, you wrote the book, you've built Order of Man, you've completely transformed your marriage and your fitness, but it builds this powerful confidence. It's not bravado. It's not this hoorah stuff. It's like, no, I'm going to do the work today. I'm going to move forward today. I'm going to fall in love with the process regardless of how I feel, regardless of moods, regardless of the weather, regardless of who's in office, regardless of how I got triggered on social media by somebody saying something. That's powerful. And so for me, it's like I tell people, if you can move forward 1% every single day, even on the days that you truly don't feel like it, then on the days that you feel like it, you're just on absolute fire.
You talk about tracking this stuff and you're using 1%, which is obviously mathematics. So like, how important is it, A, that you measure the 1% growth? And how would you measure something that's difficult to quantify, like being a better father or being a better husband?
Absolutely. The 1% rule is an equation. It's 1% progress plus daily application plus persistence plus time equals success. So for example, if somebody has a business, I love setting revenue goals, but I really, and that's great to have that vision of revenue goals, but I want to set process goals. Let's find out what has the highest potential to convert someone into a sale. So in the book, I give, the example of just a phone conversation, and we set the process goal. The 1% goals are directly tied to the highest potential to create revenue in the business, which is ultimately the outcome. But we want to focus on the process. And so in that example, it's about, okay, you're going to do 27 reach outs today. That's kind of just the example that I gave in the book. And when we focus on the numbers, when we focus on the process, many times the rest of the stuff falls into place, and it falls into place in a more powerful way. But what this really does is it allows us to avoid procrastination. And focus is a big part of this book because, man, I go to a lot of events like you do. And, a lot of times people don't lack the ambition. They don't lack the skills per se, even though they're always in pursuit of acquiring them. But man, it's a matter of focus and discipline and not procrastinating. And so the reason why people like to avoid talking about the process and they'd rather just talk about the big vision and revenue goal is because the process is 6 inches in front of their face in terms of what they have to do today.
Right. It's application.
Yeah. When things are so simple and it's like, it's right in front of us, like that scares people because there's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to run. You can't make excuses. It's either a clear, yes, I did it, or no, I didn't. And so that's what I want to give people. So if it's, I want to be a better father, awesome. So we have to find a way to quantify that. What does that mean to you? Does that mean spending a certain amount of time with your kids on a weekly basis? Cool. Let's find a way to quantify that. And then every single week, you're going to do 3 dates with your kids or whatever that may be. And that is the process of 1%.
Yeah, this makes sense. And I like the idea that you have of, okay, being a better father, great, welcome to the club. Or I want to make more money, good, we all do. I want to be a better husband, of course. I want to be healthier, obviously. But now you're talking about working backwards into defining what those mean for you, because all of that stuff's relative. Being a better father is different for me than it might be for somebody else. Being wealthy is different for me than it might be for somebody else. So we've got to define it for ourselves.
Yeah. And you know this, the world, the universe, it doesn't respond to ambiguity. You got to be you got to be specific. And again, it's very easy to be ambiguous because it lets us off the hook. Yeah, I just want to get a little bit fitter. Okay, great. By when? What does that mean? What's your body fat? What's your performance? How do you look in the mirror? How do you feel? What do people feel when you walk into a room? Nobody has answers to those questions. And so how are we actually going to do the work on something that's not defined?
Yeah, that's a challenge for sure. And that's why it is so important that you define it. So here's one of the things that I'm dealing with personally, and I'll use my fitness journey, for example. When I started this thing a little over 4 years ago, I was 50 pounds heavier than I weigh today. I got up to 235 pounds at my heaviest weight, and I'm 5'10", and it was ugly. And I was able to lose that weight fairly quickly because the more overweight you are, the easier it is, I think, initially to lose that weight. But now I'm running into the law of diminishing returns. And I feel like a lot of times I'm plateauing on my fitness journey because the gains aren't as fast or great. So how do you begin to deal with these diminishing returns when you're talking about this 1% method?
I love it, man. It's such a great question because so many people deal with it. I tell people to fall in love with the plateau. Fall in love with the plateau for this reason. Early on in your fitness journey, Ryan, you were experiencing breakthroughs very often, right?
Every day, right? Every day was something new, a PR, or I lost, 3 pounds on the scale. I mean, every day I was experiencing something.
Absolutely. And it's because you were new, right? And because your skill in regards to that and your current result were low. And so it was very easy once you changed a lot of variables and committed, it was very easy to see those results early on. But now that you've gotten much better, you're much faster. I see the stuff that you post on Facebook, you're lifting these heavy ass deadlifts and everything. I love it. But as you get stronger, as you get fitter, you're going to experience more plateaus. In other words, you're going to experience less breakthroughs.
Right.
And on the exponential growth curve, it's actually pretty crazy because when you look at the exponential growth curve, it's like it looks flat. When you're in it, it actually looks flat.
Definitely.
And you're looking straight ahead and you're like, shit, I'm in a plateau. I better change my program, better change my coach, better change my diet, better change everything. And I say, no. If you're doing the right things, if you're consistent, and obviously every time you get to new levels of mastery, you have to tighten things up to continue to see results, but stay on it, stay in the process, and the next breakthrough will come, right? I just started really investing and immersing myself in boxing, which is a new thing in fitness for me. And it's like every day I'm seeing a breakthrough, right? On my hip, the guy tells me how to do my hips and to relax, and boom, I hit a perfect punch, et cetera, et cetera. But dude, 2 years from now, I sure as hell better not be experiencing a breakthrough every session, right? I better be working on the fundamentals, working on the process, falling in love with that, and then maybe experiencing a breakthrough every couple months. And that's exactly what I tell people, because we think that the plateau means something isn't working. We think the plateau means, oh, this doesn't work anymore. When many, many times, and of course there's outliers, but many times it just means we're gaining mastery, we're gaining skill, we're gaining results, and there's a more powerful breakthrough if we stay with it.
I think this is why I like what you're doing so much, because consistency is absolutely key. I mean, I've seen people come into the podcasting game and go very quickly. I've seen people come into social media and fizzle out very quickly. I've seen people who will come into the gym for a couple of weeks or a couple of months at the beginning of the year and then fizzle out quickly. And I think the most successful in the people in the world have just found a way to be extremely consistent. And that's what you talk about here, is basically celebrating commitment. So it's not celebrating the PR necessarily. It's celebrating that you got your ass out of bed and you went into the gym.
100%. Part of the 1% rule is a code, and part of it is, number 2 is do it every single day, no matter what happens. Number 3 is celebrate your commitment. And number 5 is master your craft. And all of these kind of lead to the same thing that you just talked about, which is the power of consistency. And it's like the other day, our mutual friend Colby introduced me at this event, and he's like, he just gave me an awesome compliment. He's like, dude, this guy has been consistent everywhere for the last 3 years. And it's like, that's what it takes. And it's not that hard. You just have to keep going every single day. And a lot of times people stop on the 5-yard line, man. Like, speaking about the plateau, they're right on the edge of another touchdown, another breakthrough, and they stop. And then sometimes they never get that spark back, which to me is the biggest tragedy.
How do you coach somebody to overcome that? I mean, it's so common that somebody just quits and throws in the towel. And outside of just saying, just bear down, man, just keep going, I quite honestly don't know what to say when I run across that or see somebody else running across that.
Yeah, man. And it's so hard. And I know exactly what you're saying. And it's almost uncoachable. I can give you perspective. I can give you insights. I talk about it all over the book. But man, if you don't have the inner drive, if you don't have the inner fire, if you don't have the inner hunger, I mean, there's nothing that is going to flip that switch for you. And it's like, you have to make the choice. And I just tell people, we have a couple exercises that we do. One of them is, and it may sound kind of weird, but I have people look in front of the mirror and just spend time with themselves and ask themselves some questions. What am I here for? What do I really want? Why do I want it? And when you combine that with high levels of urgency, and for me, urgency means, one of my practical ways to create urgency in life, because Seneca on the shortness of life is one of my favorite texts. And he talks about how much time we waste and how short of this experience is like, okay, we know what we want, and we know that this experience is extremely short. I wrote in the book, 150,000 people die every single day. And
is that right? That's the number?
It is. And it's just like a number. And
that's crazy, though. That sounds so high.
I've actually made, my own death a practical application to allow myself to be consistent and create urgency. And it's like, man, I don't want to wait until my parents pass away. I don't want to wait until more people pass away in my life to actually wake up. I was at a cemetery recently, and there were young kids there, 5 years and younger. Man, I was just bursting into tears because I was looking at them, and they all left legacies. They were here for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and their parents wrote their legacy. He had an amazing smile. He, made everyone feel this way, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, if that type of stuff doesn't wake you up, if you don't have the hunger within, you can listen to every episode of Order of Man. You can listen to every episode of Resist Average. You can get Sovereignty. You can get 1% Rule. But man, we can't flip that switch for you. And so it's very hard to answer that question, because I just tell people, create some space in your life, disconnect, and find out what you really want. And if that doesn't spark you up, no book, no seminar, no program, no mentorship, no gym will.
3 spots left for our annual uprising. Guys, this is probably the last week you're going to hear me talk about it because we're going to sell this thing out. If you haven't heard me mention it before, this is our 3.5-day experience. It's in the mountains of southern Utah, my backyard. It's unlike any event that you've ever attended before. We've got physical challenges to test you mentally and physically, and of course, the brotherhood, the camaraderie that you can come to expect from any Order of Man experience. My goal during the 3.5 days that we're going to be spending together is to make you bleed, is to make you sweat, is to make you cry. And frankly, these things men don't really get all that much of in their everyday, ordinary, mundane lives. My team and I are there to create new revelations in your own patterns and behaviors, and then uncover the reasons that you perform the way you do in your life. And then we're going to give you the framework for developing new thoughts and new ideas and new habits. So if you can make it, or if you're at least interested in learning more about what it's about, including the video from our last event, head to orderofman.com/uprising. Again, that's orderofman.com/uprising. I do hope to see you there. Again, only 3 spots left. Now, with that said, let's get back to the conversation with Tommy. You bring up this really interesting perspective of focusing on death. And, I talk about it, and I think it's kind of a popular thing to address. And I think it's something that a lot of people are aware of. But I'm thinking about this as you say this. One thing that I've noticed in my own life is I have a little bit of a fear of flying. And not so much that it cripples me not to fly, but I really get anxious. Like, I do not enjoy flying at all. And I noticed this last trip that every time I'm about to go on a flight for like 2 or 3 days leading up to it, I'm a little nicer and more engaged with my kids. I'm a little sweeter to my wife. And I noticed this just last time. I'm like, man, why do I do that? Well, I think somewhere in the back of my brain, like there's a potential and a risk that I will die on this trip.
This could be it.
Yeah. And so it causes me to live life differently. So I wonder how much more effective I would be in all areas of life if I focused on that every single day as opposed to when I'm going to go on a flight.
Absolutely, man. And again, people will say this is kind of negative. Like, I don't want to focus on death every single day, but I mean, it's reality, and anything else is just distracting and avoiding from reality, right? And so to me, I actually see it as a beautiful thing. So I have daily practices that connect me to my last days. Now, obviously, I don't know when those are going to come. So I just use visualization and ask myself some questions. What are people writing? If I had a blank sheet of paper, it's my funeral, and people are saying, how did Tommy's life affect you? Like, what are they writing? And if that doesn't wake you up, same thing with you, because this is always on my mind, because I love stoicism and all. They talk about this a lot. And I say, if this was my last interaction with Taylor, my amazing girlfriend, if this was my last interaction, what would I say? And it could be a random call that on a Tuesday at 4 p.m. Like, did I say everything that I wanted to say? Because man, I'm about to get on the freeway and you never know what's going to happen. When I talk to my parents or clients or whatever, it's like, did I look at them in the eye and really connect with them, or was I just there? And I think if we can harness this, it actually becomes a beautiful, beautiful practice. And there's visualizations that you can do. And I've done some pretty intense stuff around it that just, it keeps you grounded into what's important. I mean, Steve Jobs, I quote him in the book, right? He had the commencement speech at Stanford, and he says, listen, in the face of death, you have massive clarity. You understand that only a few things in life matter. And what happens is we start to stack all of these things in life that don't matter. They just add on through time, experiences, et cetera, et cetera. And death is the great simplifier. It allows us to focus on what we want. It allows us to focus on presence. And most importantly, the legacy that we want to leave this place with. And when you can live from that, dude, every interaction is deep. You have an interaction with a cashier at the grocery store, it is 3 times deeper. You have a conversation with a client, it is 5 times deeper. You're on date night, you're with the kids, you're not thinking about the phone, you're fully present. And so it's a beautiful practice. I'm glad you brought that up.
One of the things that I've really been focused on over the past 3 or 4 weeks or so is the process of elimination in my life and decluttering, from physically decluttering my office, decluttering our house, selling things we don't need, giving things away, tons of baby clothes that we gave away we don't need anymore. I can't even begin to describe how many emails I've unsubscribed from, thousands and thousands of emails.
Probably mine.
Yeah, one of them was yours. I did that today. If I didn't, I'll make sure I do it after this conversation. Yeah. And you know what's really interesting about that is it allows me to focus on what is significant in my life and eliminates a lot of the clutter and the noise and the confusion and the distraction on this trivial nonsense that we are inundated with on a daily basis, and just gives me so much focus, clarity, and fulfillment because I have the time to focus on the things that I've identified as mattering to me.
It's the power of deletion. And that's a huge thing that I talk about. It's like everybody's busy, everybody's overflooded, everybody has too much stimulus. And so I take people through an exercise, and it's called Audit Deletion. And now I say you should do this every quarter, but to be honest, you should do it every single week. And I'm always asking my clients, hey, what did you delete today? What did you delete today? What did you delete today? Right? And I don't care if it's something like an addiction to some Netflix show that isn't serving you, or, I'll give you an example of one that I did recently. So on the topic of travel also stresses me out. It's just, I'm a very routine guy, sleep, supplements, the whole thing. So travel stresses me out. So I know no matter how refreshing of a trip I take, when I get home, my mind's on overdrive thinking on what I have to do, what I haven't done, et cetera, et cetera. So I identified that a messy place takes my energy away. A messy place actually pulls me further from my vision. A messy place puts me in a place of chaos. And so a simple hack that I did, or not a hack, something I just put into my life was, okay, every time I take a trip, I'm going to hire somebody. They're going to come to my place. They're going to clean it. So when I walk in, I don't care what state I'm in, I'm relaxed. And this is the process of audit deletion. We make a list. On the left, we got a minus. On the other side, we got a plus. Write down 100 things. And I know people are going to be like, 100? Yeah, right. Do it, because you're going to find, when you do 100, you're going to find the small stuff, mental real estate that we think is insignificant, like scrolling on Instagram for an hour a day. We think that's nothing, and that actually drains our energy. And so we make a list on the left: people, places, environments, media, even food. I'm ruthless with this. And on the right side, we do the same thing with stuff that gives us energy. And guess what we do? We put the 100 things on the left. Immediately, I guarantee with anybody I've ever done this with, you can delete at least 20% of this. And that's exactly what you're talking about. We have no space, and we have no bandwidth, and we have no capacity. And this is what people get messed up in personal development and growth, entrepreneurship. The foundation is stacked full, Ryan. And now we're wanting to add 19 new habits. We're wanting to add 19 new mindsets. We're wanting to add 19 new action steps every week. And guess what happens? There's no space. So this is a big one, the power of deletion. And every single week, just find one thing to delete, one thing to shift, one thing to automate, one thing to delegate, and you'll create space for the stuff that truly matters.
Did you call it auto deletion? What was the term you used?
Audit, like taking an
audit deletion. That makes sense.
Taking inventory and just always, and I also say this, anytime you experience what I call a level up, maybe you go to an event, like I just launched a new book, like that was a level up for me. And so guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to take inventory. I'm going to take inventory of the environments that I'm in, the places. Do they light me up still? Do they not, based on who I am today? And you and I know we are changing so fast. You and I are not the same person when we interviewed on a podcast 2 years ago or whatever it was. We've completely changed in powerful ways. And that means through that change, guess what has changed? We've changed relationships. We've changed how we operate. We've changed businesses, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a beautiful process for people to implement.
Yeah, very cool. I like that concept. I want to go back. I need to jump back to something we were talking about earlier, this inner fire within us. And I think it's challenging because a lot of guys feel like maybe that's burnt out or they don't have it. And you talked about, man, if you don't have it, there's not a whole lot you can coach to have it. But I do think that there's things that we can do in our lives to stoke that inner fire. And that's what I noticed for me. Like I was lost, man. I truly was lost for a long time. And that inner fire was all but non-existent. But the way that I was able to stoke that in my life, number one, was to take some action. Like just take a step. When you take a step and you start taking action towards something, anything, I think that starts to light the fire. When you find other people that are uplifting, motivating, inspiring, that starts to light the fire. When you find content, whether it's this podcast, your book, 1% Rule, or my book, or whatever it may be, and consuming that information, these are all ways that you can stoke the fire. Because I truly believe we all have that inner fire within us. And it's our job on a daily basis to stoke that thing, to grow that thing to a bonfire if we can.
I completely agree that we all have it. And for some of us, it's just barely, it's got a little bit of a spark. And for others, it's a massive blaze. And a lot of people are somewhere in between. But I completely agree to keep it simple. We've both been there. I've been there. Like, and I'll tell people that, and they're like, there's no way you didn't have this fire before. And I'm like, no, I did not. And so It can be cultivated. It can be nourished. It can be grown. And I love what you said. Take action. For me, I tell people, hey, listen, this is all we're going to do. You're going to do one thing that you enjoy, that nobody has to tell you to do, that you just enjoy every single day, that you haven't done in a while, and something that just gives you energy. Let's just do that for the next month. Let's see how that feels. And so it starts to begin this process of getting out of what you call this rut, or this place where it's like, man, it's not in there. I don't have it. Right. And that's, to me, it's not about going out to necessarily get something. It's remove the obstacles that are in the way of that fire and start to, like you said, take a little bit of action, move forward, do something different. Like, that's the biggest thing, Ryan. It's like we become our environment, we become our rituals, we become our habits, et cetera, et cetera. And so one of the great ways to stoke this fire, to at least give it a spark, to do something different. If you normally wouldn't go to the boxing class, jump in. If you normally wouldn't go to the personal development seminar, jump in. If you normally would sit around thinking about what you're going to do, actually do it, or go to the improv class. I don't care what it is. Something that just scares you a little bit, you jump into it. That starts to bring the fire up just a little bit. And if we can bring the fire up just a little bit, every single day we start to create the momentum, and we can get it right back to a place that we thought we would never get it again.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to these obstacles, because you mentioned it just barely, and I think we completely went off on a tangent, which was good. It was a good tangent to go off on. But we were talking about the myths. The one that stood out to me, and I think a lot of guys would be interested in hearing about, is this notion and idea of the highlight reel. So can you explain what that means, and then why that's a myth and why that becomes a challenge for people?
Absolutely. And it's just this kind of cultural deal where we look at quote unquote success stories, and we look at how people came out of nowhere, and then we disqualify people's success. So we don't know their story. And so we say, well, hey, that person had money. That person came from this place. That person
had the connections. Yep. Right.
Yeah. It's the worst practice you can do to disqualify somebody else's success. And because what you're saying is they're on a pedestal and they have something that you don't. So inherently your power to create is absolutely gone, because, hey, if you didn't come from that town, if you didn't come from this connection, then how are you going to be able to replicate that? And so the overnight success came from just studying so many different seemingly overnight successes, bands that came out of nowhere. But then when you looked at their story, they spent years touring in a piece of crap van and middle of nowhere, barely making it, being ripped off by labels and all of the stuff to come out on the other side. Good Will Hunting was a movie that everyone was like, where these two guys came out of nowhere. And when you look at them, they had both been, Damon had been in the game for 10 years and Affleck for 11 years. And they just wrote themselves that part because they were struggling, even though they were super young. And so we look at all these successes, and to me, I love the stories within. I love the stories of doubt, of failure, of trying, of pivoting, because it gives me back my power. It gives me realistic expectations. And there's no such thing as overnight success. People come from different evolutions, and different things happen at different times. And yeah, of course, like if you have a higher level of skill set and you're at the right time, yeah, you might experience faster success. But even within that, there are challenges. And I wanted to get rid of this myth, especially in a social media age. And one of the messages that I try to promote, one of the reasons why on my Instagram, I'll show me, when I was writing the book, I was showing myself up at the office at 3:30, and it's like, this is not what they're going to tell you it takes. But if you want something really bad, like, you might have to do something like this. And it's not going to make the highlight reel, but it's part of the process. And I wanted to give people their power back.
And it makes so much sense. This is a lot of the reason I don't resonate with the term superpower. Like, you'll hear that thrown around a lot. Like, what's your superpower? And what I have realized is there's not a single person out there that is a superhero, right? Nobody has some superpower that guarantees them success. And I think the more that we subscribe to that notion, the more that we do ourselves injustice, because we don't believe that we're powerful or that we have the superpower, when all it really is just getting good at a handful of things and executing relentlessly.
And that small snippet, getting good at a handful of things, right? Which means, to me, it just says you're going to pick skills that you're going to master and executing relentlessly. Like, if we just snipped the whole podcast of that and people did that, the amount of not only results that they would see, but the fulfillment within that process would be exponential. I guarantee it.
Let's just do that. And then I'll cut everything that you just said out, and it'll be a 10-second podcast, and we'll call it good.
Field Note Friday, just Ryan.
That's right. So what you do in the book is you go through some skill sets, some things that you need to develop in your life, focus, persistence, endurance. You talk about vision and reverse engineering. And for the sake of time, and we can't get to it all, but I am really curious about the difference in the perspective that you have in persistence versus endurance. Is there a difference? Why do you have two separate chapters for that? I'm really curious.
So this is the back end of the equation that I came up with. And one of the things that I talk about, endurance is the last piece of the game. So persistence to me is that, and I really borrowed a lot of this from Angela Duckworth's amazing grit. Persistence and grit to me are the same thing, but it's that's kind of that attitude that it's like, hey, whatever comes my way, like, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going no matter what comes my way. The adversity, for a long time in my entrepreneurship journey, I was, and everybody has this story, so it's not anything new, but, I'd have to make the decision, man, am I going to get gas or am I going to get food today? And it's like, but deep down, I knew without a shadow of a doubt, I believe that there was something greater for me and that my current circumstances did not define who I was. Just because I was broke, it didn't mean that I was a broke person. They were just my current circumstances. And there's this residue effect where I was putting in so much work, the results hadn't caught up. And we all have that residue effect. And so to me, grit and persistence is just being able to look at circumstances in your life and yes, acknowledge them. Yes, you don't have money in the bank account. Use that as power. Use that as fuel. But don't use it to say that you're not worthy, that you can't do it, that you're unable to do it. Just use it as something to keep going. And so to me, grit is about facing adversity, and endurance is like, how long are you willing to last? This is a 100-mile race. Everybody wants to treat this game like it's a 2-mile race. And I might not be the guy who's going all out from the start, but I'm going to keep moving. And during the endurance piece, I have a thing that says endurance is messy. Deal with it. Endurance requires a lot of mental, physical, and emotional stamina. And I gave a story about David Goggins, which is a super intense story about him.
Unbelievable stories, yeah.
Yeah, the story where he was finishing the 100-mile event, and there's nothing messier than what he said, right? But I want people to acknowledge that. And I say the same thing, growth is messy. And so, again, this goes back to expectation. It's like, dude, this is not linear. You're going to have the challenges. You're going to have the doubts. You're going to have all of that stuff. But can you have enough grit to look at your circumstances and say, okay, I'm going to keep moving forward? And can you endure long enough? Because so many people, Ryan, they give up when they're 3 feet from gold. They give up right before the breakthrough. And so they're constantly, hopping from thing to thing, business to business, relationship to relationship, always looking for that silver bullet when, hey, you had it all along. You just didn't stay in the game long enough.
I love it, man. Powerful stuff. And obviously we could go so much more in depth in this. I mean, we didn't scratch the surface, and there's so many more chapters and conversations and bullet points and topics to be had here. But just for the sake of time, guys, go out and pick a copy of the book up. I know you won't be disappointed. It's a great book, great perspectives. And Tommy, you and I are in alignment with probably about 99.9% of the things that we think and say. So I really appreciate you for that. Hey, as we wind down, I want to ask you a couple of questions. One, I've already asked you before, so I'm curious to see how this may have changed or evolved. And that question is, what does it mean to be a man?
I love it. I love that question. And so to me, right now in my evolution, being a man means to really be the beacon physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. When I say be the beacon, that just means that you are grounded in who you are. You're not afraid of your masculine power, but at the same time, you balance that out and you have this holistic perspective. And it means being a leader, and most importantly, a leader for your own life. Because when you can lead yourself in a world where everybody's searching for external leaders outside of themselves, you actually become that beacon. And when you become that beacon, that affects not only you, your family, the people around you, but it creates the dent in the world that everybody's looking for.
Right on, man. Powerful stuff. How do we connect with you, learn more about what you're up to, and then, of course, pick up our copy of the book?
Appreciate it, man. The best place for the book, 1% Rule, you'll find it on there. It's on Amazon. And besides that, the best place to really connect with me is the Resist Average Academy podcast. We have had my man Ryan twice on the show, I believe episode 10. And then recently, I don't know the exact number, but I know it was within the last month or so.
And those are the most downloaded episodes. I know that. I mean, I don't even have to look at the numbers. I just know that's the case.
100%. But that would be just a great place. If you follow Order of Man, we have a lot of similar ethos, and that would be a great place to start.
Right on, brother. We'll let everybody connect with you there. Guys, go check out the book, connect with Tommy. He's doing great things. He's a good friend of mine, and he's doing it. So, Tommy, I appreciate you, brother. I really do. I appreciate more than what you share here, which I do appreciate. I appreciate our friendship. I mean, it's been good to get to know you. It's been good over the past 2-3 years to watch you evolve and grow and morph into something truly inspiring for me and millions of people across the planet. So, brother, I appreciate you for taking the time to join us today.
And right back to you, my man. You're one of the guys, when I'm running up one of these mountains in Arizona, there's this kind of silent code of conduct. And when you see another guy who's busting his ass, you don't say anything. You just acknowledge him and you look each other in the eye and hey, we're both doing hard work. And for us on our journeys, I see the same thing, man. So massive respect for what you do and what you've created, but most importantly, who you are.
Right on. Yeah, we'll have to do that when I come down there, although I imagine you will run circles around me. I'm a little concerned about that, quite honestly.
We're going to film it, my man.
No, we're not going to film it. We'll just do it, you and me, on that one.
Perfect.
Gentlemen, there it is, my conversation with my good friend, Tommy Baker. I hope that you enjoyed this one. Again, I told you his energy is infectious. You probably heard that. And I would definitely encourage you to pick up a copy of his new book, The 1% Rule. I've read it. You will not be disappointed. And if you would, give us a shout out on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, wherever. There might be new ones I'm not even aware of, but wherever you are on social media, we're going to be there. So just search for Order of Man, connect with me, connect with Tommy there. And let us know. Let us know what you got from this podcast. Let us know what you're going to be implementing in your life. If you've read the book, give him a shout out for that and tell him how much you appreciate his work. I know I certainly do. Guys, outside of that, just a reminder of our brotherhood, the Iron Council. I mentioned that before. orderofman.com/Iron Council is where you can go to learn a little bit more. And then our 3.5-day experience in the mountains of southern Utah. It's called The Uprising, and it's held May 3rd through the 6th, 2018. You can go to orderofman.com/uprising. Again, orderofman.com/uprising. And then the last thing is I had mentioned my good friend over at Origin. If you go to originmaine.com/orderofman, you can check out what they're up to, what they're doing with regards to their training and their compression gear and their nutrition line with Jocko. You guys won't be disappointed. I use that nutrition line very, very regularly, and I can tell you I feel a difference. So guys, with that said, I'm going to call it a day. Again, as always, I appreciate you. I'm glad you're on this journey. Do me a favor, if you would, please share this podcast with another man that you feel would benefit from the message that we're sharing here within the Order. Again, I appreciate you. I'm excited to be reclaiming what it means to be a man together. I could not do this without you guys. But until Friday, guys, take action and become the man you are meant to be.
Thank you for listening to the Order of Man podcast. If you're ready to take charge of your life and be more of the man you were meant to be, we invite you to join the Order at orderofman.com.